Hello and welcome back. In this episode we're going to have a go at making some nice furniture for the dungeon, so the kind of thing you can see here, though it's worth pointing out that I've also included old or broken versions of some of the textures, as I think that kind of thing will be useful as well. Anyway, as always, there's a link to the PDF file down in the description, so let's get started. Okay then, the first thing we're going to have a go at making is one of the benches or pews. So for this, we'll cut out a few of the side pieces and glue those to some thin foam core. So here I am doing that with a regular glue stick. Then we can take a piece of the plain wooden texture, that's roughly the same size as a piece of foam core, and we'll glue that on the reverse side. So there you go, something like this. Then, once we've given that plenty of time to dry, we'll cut those out with a sharp knife. So this kind of thing. Okay, so to cover up the exposed edges, we'll then need to cut out a strip of the wood texture that's the same thickness as the foam core, and then wrap that around the entire piece, just like you can see here. And there you go. That's the kind of thing that we're aiming for. And for each bench, we'll obviously need both a left side and a right side. Right then, for the seat itself, we'll take a piece of thin corrugated cardboard, and after making sure that the corrugation is running in this direction, we'll cut out a piece that's 1¼ inches wide. Next, we'll take some more of the plain wooden texture and cut out a piece that's big enough to wrap around the cardboard, and then simply glue that into place, just like you can see here. And there you go. Okay, once that's dry, we'll mark out just over ½ inch in from one end, so something like 9/16 of an inch or 14mm, and we'll then score the cardboard down that line, maybe even cutting through the first level, so that we can bend the piece into a right angle, just to get the basic bench shape, so something like you can see here. Now, if you want to add a padded seat, we'll need to take the cushion texture and glue that to some thin cardboard. Then we can cut out 2 strips of that, the length of which is entirely up to you. It just depends on how long a bench you want to make, but in this instance I've gone with a length of 1¾ inches. Okay, next we'll go back to the wooden seat and just trim off the excess from one end, and we can then start gluing the cushion textures in place. So the way I like to do this is to glue one to the shorter side of the fold first, and leave an equal gap of around 1mm or so around all of the sides. And then I can do a similar thing on the longer side of the fold, but this time glue the texture nearer to the edge, like you can see here. Then we'll just need to cut the cardboard to size, leaving a similar sized gap between the edge of the cardboard and the cushion texture, so that when we bend it back into shape, it should look something like this. Right then, here's all of the pieces that we've just made, and all we'll need to do now is glue them all together. So we'll take the glue gun and run a thin line of hot glue along one edge of the seat, and glue that to the inside of one of the side pieces. And there we go. And we can then do the exact same thing on the other side. But this time, I also like to push the piece down onto the table, just to make sure that it sits nice and flat. And when we're done, this is the kind of thing we should be left with. So a nice little bench or pew, the kind of thing that you might find inside a church or temple, and that kind of thing. But like I mentioned earlier, we can make these in various sizes, so here's a little beaten up chair that I've made, this time using the worn cushion texture. So yeah, that's the benches done. Okay, next we're going to make the mirror. So we'll first cut out the mirror texture itself, and we're going to glue that to some thick cardboard. So here I am doing just that. Then we'll just cut that roughly to size. Next we'll cut out a piece of the wood texture that's roughly the same size, and glue that onto the back. So there we go, and once that's dry, we'll cut it out with a sharp pair of scissors. Then we'll need to take a regular toothpick and enough of the wooden texture to wrap around that, and glue that into place. You've seen me do this in various other videos with drinking straws or similar, so it's a fairly simple idea, but it can be a little tricky at times. Anyway, we'll need to make a couple of those and cut out 2 pieces that are 1 1/8 of an inch long and a smaller piece that's 3/4 of an inch long. Okay, so now we're going to glue those pieces together in a kind of rugby post shape. So I'll use the grid of the cutting mat to help me glue them at right angles to one another, and here I am gluing the smaller of the 3 pieces around 1/3 of the way along one of the larger pieces. So something like this. And then we can do the same thing on the other side. And there we go. Next, we'll apply a small blob of hot glue to the crossbeam and glue the mirror to the centre of that. And as you can hopefully see, I also like to tilt the mirror slightly, just so that it's leaning backwards a little bit, if that makes sense. Now, we are going to need to make a base for this, so we'll take some thin corrugated cardboard and cut out a piece that's 1 1/8 of an inch long by a 1/2 inch wide. And we'll also need to cut out enough of the wood texture to wrap around that. So here I am doing just that. And since you've probably seen me do this kind of thing many times before, I'll really speed this part up. Okay then, so the only thing left to do now is to apply some hot glue to the bottom of the toothpicks and simply glue the whole thing to the centre of the base. And there you go. There's the finished mirror. In this case the broken one. But I've also gone ahead and made the fancy one off screen, so yeah, there's the 2 different types. Right then, the last thing we're going to have a go at making is a folding screen, and for this we'll take 3 of the panel textures and glue those to some thin single corrugated cardboard, and we'll also cut out another 3 of the panels exactly to size. Then, once the glue's had time to dry, we'll trim each of the cardboard panels to size and glue one of the paper textures to the back, so that we end up with something like that. Okay, you can probably ignore this next part if you're not too bothered about having a little bit of corrugation showing, but if you are, you can take a piece of the wood texture, glue that to some thin cardboard, and cut a strip that's a little bit wider than the cardboard that we've just used, as you can see here. Then all you'll need to do is cut out a length that's the same width as the panel and hot glue that into place. So this kind of thing. Right then, now that's out of the way, the next thing we'll need to do is wrap some more of the toothpicks in the wood texture and cut out 4 pieces that are 1 1/2 inches long. Then we'll simply glue a toothpick on either side of the panel, so that's the one side done, and now the other, and there we go. Then we'll do the same thing for the other 2 panels, except that this time we'll only glue a toothpick to one of the sides, as when we assemble the pieces we'll be gluing the other side to an existing toothpick, kinda like this. Anyway, for the assembly itself we'll do a similar thing as before, but as I say, we're applying some glue to the exposed side of the new panel and gluing that to the toothpick of the previous panel, if that makes sense. And as you can see, I'm also gluing them together at a slight angle so that they form a kind of zigzag shape when looking at them from above. So there you go, there's the finished piece, and as you can see, this one has a few holes in it, but you can also make one that's in perfect condition as well. Anyway, while that was the last real build of this video, I have also included a few small rugs in the PDF, but there's not much to say about them, as all you really need to do is cut them out. That being said, if you do want to add a bit more texture, you can scrunch them up a few times, like you can see here, and then add a few folds and creases here and there, so that you end up with something like that. And as you can see, I've also done a similar thing with the worn rug, and cut a few tears along some of the edges, and if you're worried about them being a bit lightweight, you can also glue them to a base, like I've done here, just so that they don't go flying across the room every time someone sneezes. So yeah, that's it for another episode. This is where I'm supposed to tell you to like, share and comment and all that other nonsense, but you know what to do. Anyway, all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching. I hope you're still enjoying the series, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.